Hello, 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 everybody. And guys, feel free to say hello in the chat box. You guys will be muted, and the chat box is the way that we communicate. So feel free, I've just opened mine up, and feel free to say hello. This is the way we normally start our sessions in the transformation support community. We all say hello to each other. This is a nice way to sort of all join in together. And guys, please, if you would like to, if you feel comfortable enough, show us your faces. You don't have to, but the transformation support community program is a judgment-free zone, so we don't care what you look like. I'm just going to check the chat box. G'day, Karen and Lisa, Julia, Suzanne, Scylla. G'day, Carolyn, Rachel, Raina, Vicky, Dawn, Selene. And we see a couple of people who are already in our transformation support community program. Nice to see you guys. These guys, there's a few people here who are already part of our community, and I think they're just jumping in just to get a sneak peek of what we're doing in this this upcoming emotional eating and psych wellbeing series. Oh, g'day, Heather. And Heather says she doesn't have a camera on this computer, but hello. Yeah, cool. Guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen because I got a bunch of slides for you today. And I have been told that there's a little grey box somewhere, and that's me just keeping an eye on all of you guys. So I might minimize that for the moment, but I'll keep my chat box up so I can talk to you as we go. So guys, the first thing that I wanted to say was welcome. And look, thank you very much for your interest in this emotional eating and psychological wellbeing series. I do know that if you want to improve your eating, or whether you want to manage your weight more effectively or feel more comfortable in your body, there are just a zillion options for you to be able to do that. There are just, there are so many things out there that are available to you. So it means a lot that that you're interested in doing this work. And I think with emotional eating and psychological well-being, they can be a bit challenging to address. So I did want to start by congratulating you for being brave enough to even think about doing this type of work. Look, as you'll see, people get brilliant results in doing emotional eating work with us, but it does take a leap of faith. So I'm glad that you're here and thinking about taking that leap. So I thought I would just introduce myself quickly. I figure a lot of you guys probably know who I am, but if not, you probably want to know who this guy is, who's going to be talking to you for the next hour. And then if you join the program, supporting you in the program, because I run the program. So my name is Mackintosh, and I'm a psychologist who's really passionate about eating, physical activity, weight, and body image. So that's kind of my jam. I did my study in psychosocial factors and weight management. So how your mind and your social circumstances affect your ability to manage your weight. I think probably the biggest value of me to you is my clinical experience. I wrote a blog about this, and it's been over 15 years that I've been supporting people with emotional eating and related challenges. So I'm not a researcher who just sits in the lab. I know how to get dirty with these ideas and actually, when the rubber hits the road, turn these principles into things that you can actually do and work with and that can transform your life. I run Weight Management Psychology. So we're a psychology-based weight management clinic. We've got almost 7 psychs now, and a couple of client services team and a dietitian. So that keeps me pretty busy when I'm not doing this online stuff. And I'm also lucky enough to do some teaching and mentoring. I teach psychologists through the Australian Psychological Society, dietitians through Dietitians Australia, and personal trainers through Philex. So it's something I really enjoy doing too. And I'm pretty big on spreading what I consider evidence-based, compassionate, and person-centered ideas rather than weight-centered ideas in the public. So I've been lucky enough to write a book, and if anyone's interested, I just appeared on an episode of ABC's Catalyst, which is a show here in Australia. And I actually talked a guy through his experience of emotional eating and binge eating. So Nick will put that link up if anyone wants to watch it. It actually was a really good little episode. And guys, from time to time, I'm just going to kind of check the chat box and see how we're all going. But what are we going to do today? We're going to start off talking about, well, what actually is emotional eating and why do I do it? A lot of people will say to me, it's like, Glenn, why do I do this thing that I know I really don't want to do? And we'll have a little bit of a look about the origins of emotional eating. We will look at how emotional eating affects your psychological well-being and affects your ability to effectively manage your weight. And then we're going to look beyond emotional eating. So we're actually going to look at how your emotions affect your ability to make food choices, even beyond that, when it's not as simple as I'm feeling bad, I want to eat, that pure emotional eating. We're going to actually look at how your emotions affect your food choices in a variety of ways. And then I'm going to let you know about this upcoming emotional eating and psychological well-being 12-week webinar series that we've got coming up that I'm just super excited about. It's going to be really, really cool. So let's start with what is emotional eating. The way that psychologists define it is that we're increasing our food intake in response to the uncomfortable feelings. So it's not like, it's like what this lady is doing. She's feeling sad and she's consoling herself with eating an ice cream. I mean, this is a very cliche example, but it's a good one. So this is what we're talking about here. We're not talking about this lady who's also eating an ice cream, but she looks like she's more enjoying herself. That's another thing that we do tackle in another one of our courses. But that's not what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about this pure emotional eating, which is the way we define that is when we're increasing our food intake in response to the negative or the unpleasant emotions. That's an important definition because, all eating is emotional in some sense, but it's important for us to pinpoint this particular type of eating that we're talking about and the effects that this particular type of eating can have. So where does this thing kind of start? Well, the first thing that I want you to know is that it's the most normal thing in the world. Our brains are pretty smart. They know how to keep us surviving and thriving and procreating. And they associate anything that's associated with our survival and our well-being, like sleep, like sex, and like food, with pleasure. So it's hardwired into our pleasure center to enjoy food. And I think a great example of that is this baby that you see on the screen. We know when babies are born, they can't do a whole lot very well, but they can find food. And we know that even if we put a baby on its mum's tummy, it will instinctively know how to slide up and find the food. It can't see very well, it can't hear very well, but its neural network knows how to find food. So then on top of this neural hardwiring, we often will develop emotional eating. We'll sort of develop our emotional eating as children. And this is typically when we're feeling unpleasant feelings and we're given food to soothe those unpleasant feelings. So again, another really cliche example here is, we go to the doctor. The doctor's a much bigger, scarier person than, an unfamiliar person. It might smell funny, and then we get a needle, and the needle hurts physically, but also emotionally. But to help us deal with that, then we get a lolly. And I'm sure that we can think of lots of different examples of how often our parents or our caregivers soothed us with food. So we're just then developing that innate neural mapping. The whole time this happens, what we're doing in neuroscience terms is we're down regulating the pleasure center or the hedonic system of our brain. Now, down regulating, all that means is that the down regulation is the reduction in a number of cells in the body. So what we're talking about here when it comes to emotional eating is a reduction in the dopamine receptors in the brain. So you have less dopamine receptors, meaning you need more dopamine to feel the same kind of pleasure. Now, then as adults, we tend to sort of consolidate our own emotional eating, and we develop our own adult emotional eating routines. So for some of us, this might be, driving home and stopping past the servo on the way home so no one sees what we're eating. Or it could be part of a shared family ritual that we all kind of just chill out from the day and emotionally eat together. Or for a lot of people I see, it's something that happens at the end of the day, like work is finished, kids have gone to bed, and it marks like a really precious kind of a me time. But we develop our own routines, but those routines are really based on that hardwiring and that developed hardwiring and consolidating that. So this is kind of how emotional eating develops. And all the time we're down regulating that pleasure center in the brain. Now we've got to talk about something really important here when we talk about this, to go just a little bit further into this, because here's where the food industry sort of enters the equation. And the food industry creates what we call hyper palatable foods. And these are really just high fat, high salt, high sugar foods that are designed to really target that pleasure center. And they do really two things. They give us this pleasure, this enjoyment, and that's a positive reinforcement. When we eat them, they're yum and we like that. But we also, and I'm just conscious, I'm just going to minimize my little screen of seeing all of you guys so you can see all of this. But we also reduce our discomfort. So we do this comfort eating that reduces our discomfort. We use these foods to soothe ourselves. And that's what we call a negative reinforcement. We're actually removing something negative. So that in this case, it could be a negative emotion like sadness or stress or boredom or loneliness. Now, when we continue to do this, so we're continuing to do this emotional eating, we've got kind of our baseline reward threshold, what we need to feel like we're satisfied and we've had enough. Through this repeated eating, we actually, and this down regulation of the pleasure center, we actually reduce this. We actually, it takes us more to get up to this baseline threshold. We're down regulating the dopamine receptors. And so it creates a feeling of stress when we don't get enough of these foods. And then we have to eat more to get the same kind of feeling. And you can see how this has, of course, addictive elements, because this is what happens with lots of other addictions. And this slide is courtesy of Paul Stanley from Griffith Uni, who actually has done his research in eating and food addiction. So what are the effects of emotional eating on our psychological well-being? in the broader strokes, I just want to say that it doesn't help you with your emotions. It doesn't help you feel any better. In fact, it tends to make people feel worse. Firstly, it's actually quite ineffective at resolving your uncomfortable emotions. If you're cheesed off at your husband, for example, and then you eat, when you finish eating, you're still cheesed off at your husband, typically. Doesn't typically resolve the emotions very well. And it actually often creates more discomfort. We know that often people, I think of it like you've reordered your original feelings, but with a side order of guilt, because we often have judgments about eating in a not nutritious way, especially if we have values around eating healthily. It is related to binge eating. So and binge eating is where we're eating more than a normal amount of food in a short space of time. And of course, when we binge, we typically experience that as very uncomfortable. And so that's why I think of emotional eating like double dipping on a bad mood. And so for these reasons, we can see why it is associated with psychological challenges like depression, self-esteem, and relationship difficulties. An interesting thing to note too is that emotional eating is also linked with a lack of personal meaning in your life. So not feeling as though you're living with meaning and purpose and direction. I think that's important to note because when you have these kind of like existential issues, it's not as simple as I'm feeling sad or I'm feeling angry. But if we're not feeling that sense of direction and purpose in our lives, that can be something that underlies emotional eating for a lot of people. And so what does this all mean, this relationship between emotional eating and psychological well-being? It kind of means a couple of things. As we reduce our emotional eating, we're likely to feel a lot better, which is awesome. But it works the other way too. As we begin to feel better, our emotional eating will likely just reduce and fall away a bit as well. And that's why we're actually in this upcoming program, we're spending half of the time on psychological well-being and half of the time on emotional eating. And we get this experience that a lot of people who do emotional eating work with us kind of go through, where they begin the work just to get over emotional eating, which is distressing enough in and of itself. But then they actually end up changing their life in far more profound ways. And sometimes they even say those things are more meaningful to them than just stopping the emotional eating. Now, the other thing that emotional eating does is it does tend to keep you locked in a struggle with your weight. So what we know is that emotional eating is associated with being a higher body weight, but it's also associated with gaining weight over time and fluctuating, so yo-yoing over time. So this is a little graph here, and you can see as we go up on the left is your emotional eating score. And we can see that the higher your emotional eating score, the more likely you are to sit at a higher body weight. But then also the more likely you are to gain weight over time versus maintaining it. And you're more likely to fluctuate, so to go up and down versus staying at a sort of around about a similar weight. It is associated also with weight gain after you lose weight. So a lot of people, if you lose weight and you haven't overcome emotional eating, you haven't learned new ways to deal with your feelings, you're at a much higher risk of regaining that weight. Really interestingly, emotional eating is not always associated with losing less weight. So if you go on a weight loss kick, emotional eating doesn't always prevent you from losing weight. And that's because I think that it often kind of hides, when you're in that like weight loss honeymoon period. You're just kind of, going along with it. You're in the zone and it kind of hides away and you're not emotional eating. Doesn't mean you've actually learned new ways to deal with your feelings. Just kind of means you're highly motivated and you're not doing it for a period of time. So that can be a sort of a tricky thing that we have to watch out for. So, and guys, feel free. I'm just checking the chat box. Feel free to share with me any of your thoughts. I do realize that this is a lot of information, and I kind of wanted to give you just a big crash course. And the cool thing is you'll be able to replay this if you'd like as many times as you want if you miss anything. So it's all kind of going to be there for you. But this is a big crash course in emotional eating, like emotional eating 101. Okay, so let's talk for a second about how our emotions affect our eating choices, even if we're not emotionally eating. So whoever feels a bit crazy when it comes to food, like whoever feels as though they've got there's a couple of people like, yep, they're kind of in two minds, and you have these sort of two parts of you that are kind of battling it out in your brain. And Carolyn said, I like the sound of looking at the psychological well-being. Yeah, Carolyn, it's the more and more work we do on emotional eating, the more we realize that you actually can't. It's all if you're not at least balanced emotionally, it becomes almost impossible to successfully overcome emotional eating. So that's why we're actually starting this program with the psychological well-being, and then the emotional eating work becomes a lot easier. Okay, so there's a few people putting their hands up saying, yep, that's me. So I think this should be really useful for you. I'll put my little box with you guys up there so everyone can see. Having these two parts of your mind is completely normal. Because there are actually two systems that are operating in your mind at any time that are making your food choices. We call this, psychologists, we love big words, we call this dual process dynamics. There are two processes that are going on that are making your food choices, and those processes are actually interacting with each other. So hopefully I can explain this. I can't explain this. Let's see if I can explain this quickly and well. The first system we call the reflective system. So this is the system that often takes a lot of considered decision, and it's a system that kind of weighs up our actions and the consequences of those actions. And it is related. Using a system is related to effort or willpower. I think of this system, the reflective system, like Dr. Spock from Star Trek. So if you're not a Star Trek fan, Spock was half Vulcan, and the Vulcan people had trained themselves to kind of suppress their emotions and just be highly logical, reasonable, rational creatures. So we all, of course, have that part of our brain that's a bit Spock-like. And then there is the impulsive system. So this system happens really, really quickly, often so quickly that we don't even know that it's happening. It doesn't take a lot of effort, and it's an emotionally based system. So it gives us urges and cravings and impulses. It is related to our habits and related to just doing what we always do or what we normally do. And I think of this like the Captain Kirk system in our mind. Kirk was emotional and impulsive and kind of a bit of a wild card. So we have these two parts of our minds that are making these food decisions. And anyone want to guess who is typically in charge when we're making emotional eating choices? The impulsive system or the reflective system, or the Kirk system or the Spock system? Anyone want to have a guess? I won't call your name out if you do. Someone said impulsive. And you are bang on. Yeah. It is someone said Kirk. You're both bang on. And this is interesting because we actually spend a lot of time in health professionals' conversations talking with that reflective part. It's like, yeah, let's do this. If I eat this way, this is going to help me reach those goals. And we're very logical about it. But when we get into our own life situations at the end of a big day or when we're highly stressed, that system is actually not kind of running the show anyway. So let me talk you through how uncomfortable feelings affect dual process dynamics, this interaction between Spock and Kirk. And someone just said in a direct message, Glenn, can you consider how COVID lockdown impacts emotional eating? Absolutely. Of course, lockdown gives us more uncomfortable emotions. And then it's going to result in increased emotional eating. And so that's why that was really a secondary reason why we're doing this new program on emotional eating and psychological well-being, because we think that psychological well-being is probably more important right now than it ever has been for a lot of people. But let me kind of answer that and continue to answer that as we go through this slide. So when we're feeling persistent or recurring or intense unpleasant feelings, i.e. a lot of us in COVID lockdowns or experiencing some of the other effects of the pandemic, it decreases the use of our reflective system. So a lot of factors will decrease our ability to use that reflective system. And I think of that like making Spock smaller. If we don't get enough sleep, certain substances like alcohol, medications, recreational drugs, if we're not drinking enough or eating enough, and of course, emotions. So if we're feeling lots of unpleasant emotions, it actually weakens our ability to use that reflective system. And this, because the reflective system is willpower, this reduces our ability to make choices that involve willpower. So you see, that's important if we're wanting to make a choice away from emotional eating. But it's also important if we're going to want to change any habits. So if we want to say start cooking dinner rather than ordering Uber Eats, for example. If we're feeling persistent, recurring or intense unpleasant emotions, we actually have less of that willpower in our brains to make those decisions. Now, the flip side of that is that these uncomfortable emotions, when we get too much of them or they're too regular, they increase the use of the impulsive system. So they make Kirk really big. Now, this then makes our habit strength go up. And this is not a good sign if our habit is emotional eating. So that's why we get that, like I talked about before, that Spocks in our office. Yes, we're both Spocks. This makes sense. This is a great plan. But then after a long day at your office, you go into Kirk mode and everything that we talked about, it just goes out the window anyway because Spock is not in control. So you can see here that, this with Spock going out the window and Kirk being in control, this creates a really difficult catch-22, is that the more emotional we are, the harder it is to make choices away from emotional eating because we don't have the right Kirk-Spock balance. And then that makes us feel worse. So this is a real difficulty. Now, I want to just introduce you to an idea that I think will help you. And this is a really good place where we often start with overcoming emotional eating. Why have I got a toothbrush up there? Well, I want to introduce you to this idea of emotional hygiene. So we don't wait until our teeth, hopefully, our teeth are all like furry and gross before we brush them. We brush them regularly to take care of them, and that really helps them stay clean and healthy and shiny. We don't necessarily do the same thing with our emotions. We often wait till we're feeling really bad and then try and figure out how to deal with them. And we often do it in less effective ways, like emotional eating. So a really good thing, if you're sort of thinking, hey, I'm struggling with the effects of COVID, or I'm someone who feels more than my fair share of unpleasant feelings, then I'd really encourage you to look at your emotional hygiene and start putting in some rituals of emotional self-care. And what this will mean is that your unpleasant feelings overall will reduce, but it will also mean that when you then go to reach for new ways to deal with your feelings, so you're feeling emotional, and you want to deal with those emotions, you actually have some techniques, some strategies that you're already familiar with. So that will be something that I would really like to encourage you to think about. That's a really good starting point. Guys, I'm going to read to you a little story about emotional eating. And I'd love to hear any of your experiences, whether some of this resonates with you or whether it just is not your experience. And if so, what your experience is. This is just a client of mine who said, I emotionally eat all the time. For some reason, I just can't get it right. So I'm happy to give you some personal experiences from an emotional eater's point of view. Perhaps one of the most powerful cues for me is a sense of desperation when I'm frustrated or stressed, which may be with personal, work, or family issues. The desire to get rid of the tension or stress I'm under can feel overwhelming. It means I'm willing to do almost anything to make it end. There are butterflies in my stomach, and food smothers them. In fact, it's almost impossible to distinguish between hunger and anxiety until much later in the process of reflecting on my emotional eating when it's already done. There's also a feeling that I have to do something effective, and if I can't solve the problem that's creating the stress, then at least I can eat, and eating is better than nothing. It's kind of funny when you see that written in black and white. The final understanding I have is a sense of punishment, which is often connected to a sense of frustration. For example, I may be feeling angry about a situation and unable or unwilling to do something effective to solve the problem. And when I eat, I'm aware that there is a conversation happening where I'm saying, well, someone has to pay for this, and I seem to be happy enough that that person is me, until afterwards. So who has themselves experienced any similar things to that person? I'm feeling that that's probably something that quite a few people will resonate with, at least part of that in some way. And I think that you can hear that Kirk and Spock interplay, that Kirk is really high, the impulsive system is really high. I have to get rid of this feeling. And then afterwards, I've done the emotional eating, and now Spock, the logical, rational, reflective self, comes in and goes, oh, I didn't really want to do that. And a couple of people have said, yeah, look, definitely that's me. Okay, so let's start. And I have no idea what that big swirly thing is there on the screen. I didn't do it. This is a little exercise. And again, we're going to do this in real crash course style, because in the webinar series that we have coming up, we actually spend a whole webinar on this section. And Nick will put up a link to this exercise, which is called the More Marvelous Methods to Manage Moods list. So if you'd like to print one of these out and give it a crack, then you can at least get started now. So what we do is we start off this exercise with brainstorming what I call more marvelous methods to manage your moods. So I've kind of got that most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, emotional eating is not the answer. Often we say there is no nutritional solution to an emotional problem. So if emotional eating is mostly not the answer, what are the answers? And guys, I'd like you to share with me now. What are ways that you have that are better ways to feel better, that are not food. What do you do that helps you feel better? Give it to me, guys. Okay, so someone takes hot showers. Hot showers are a total favorite of mine. Singing, fantastic. Swimming, some physical movement, journaling. And so, guys, if you're liking all of these, walking with a friend, sitting outside, please write these down, because this is the first step of this process. Coloring in, watching TV, walking and gardening, phoning a friend, painting, another walking, another connecting with friends, being with the dogs, listening to music that lifts my spirit. So there's more ways to manage your feelings, thank goodness, than there are grains in the sand. Meditation, knitting, deep breathing, guys, this is a wonderful list. And what we will do is in any links to this video on the website, we'll put this chat box in there so people can really make a start on this. Now, the next thing you do then is you start to write down on this sheet ways that will work for you. So now, once you've done the brainstorming, you start to write down some things. And this, I like to have a variety, because you're going to want things for when you've got no energy, and you're going to want things for when you've got too much energy. You just got all this pent up energy. You need to get it out. You're going to need things for when you have to get out of the house, and especially now, you're going to have things where you cannot get out of the house. So you want to have a variety of things, and that's going to maximize the chances that when you get here and you look at this list, you've got something better that will work for you at that time. Now, the final step is then you put it up on the fridge. You put it up on the fridge or pantry, because a lot of emotional eating is impulsive. And remember, that's unconscious. The Kirk mode is unconscious. And so we do like what I call zombie eating. And you're kind of in half conscious mode at best. And then when this is on your fridge, it'll jolt you into an awareness. So it's suddenly Spock is a part of the conversation. And not only is he a part of the conversation, he actually has some good ideas, because these were some good ideas that were pre-thought through by you. Now, that is a beautiful start, and I'd love you to consider writing your own more marvelous methods list and putting it up putting it up on the fridge. And if you do, please let me know what happens. Oh, yep. Someone asked, what is tapping? Tapping must be on there somewhere. And Em's just provided a great response there. It's a stress reduction technique that helps with food cravings. And we actually have just finished a tapping series in the Transformation Support Community. Now, if you join the Transformation Support Community, all of our previous webinar series are available to you, so you can delve into them. There's one on tapping, there's one on intuitive eating and joyful movement, there's one on setting yourself up with the foundations for success and looking at your goals and your values. So that's kind of all there for you. Now, just to let you know that it is possible, this is one of our program participants who, with permission, just shared this great little example of how she had a lot going on for her, and she did a pretty ingenious kind of way to deal with her feelings that day. So I just thought this was a good example to kind of show you that it is possible, and sometimes it does require a bit of creativity. I mean, this is a bit of an extreme example, but I think it's a good one. So here we go. That's a really cool little example of how Penny realized what was going on for her, And it was a pretty interesting thing she did, is go and get a haircut. I mean, you wouldn't do that every day. But it helped her become more calm about her food choices. She incorporated some beautiful intuitive eating there at the end of saying, look, I could have some chocolate, but I'm going to look at these small ones versus the family blocks, and then decided, actually, that's not what I really want, and went with an even more nutritious choice. And guys, this is just an example. If you'd like to have a read of this, this is just an example of a person who has sort of made decisions like Penny has made over and over again, and sort of is experiencing life on the other side of emotional eating. And one of the things that I really like about this is that it's a great example of how we often start the emotional eating work just to overcome the emotional eating, but then end up sort of transforming our lives in sometimes even more profound ways. So I wrote about this. I use this example in my book, and I call it, the title is From Better Eater to Better Mother. So that this person started to overcome emotional eating, but then ended up actually having a better relationship with her kids, with her family, as well as becoming a lot less stressed and feeling a lot better. So this is an example of what can happen when you do this work. So in that vein, I really want to invite you, you're signing up for your first free webinar, and now you're getting some homework. But I would like to invite you to think of, what we've covered so far and what can be useful for you. I think good change is simple. So maybe just choose one little idea and start to have a play, experiment around with that. And I think probably the two things that we've covered, the two big things, are the emotional hygiene. So could I put in place some regular routines of emotional self-care to help me get a better balance of emotions, and to help with that Kirk Spock or reflective impulsive dynamic? Or do I want to give them more marvelous methods to manage my moods list a go? And guys, again, I would love to hear your thoughts and your experiences on how this goes. So guys, let me let you know about this upcoming 12-week series that we have that starts in a couple of weeks. So I thought I'd just take you through exactly what we're covering. So we'll start off with, kind of setting the stage, and we will kind of go through a lot of what we've been talking about today, but just in a little bit more detail. And then we're going to spend 5 whole weeks on the psychological well-being and just helping you to feel better. That's the start of the program. Again, we're going to start with emotional hygiene. So rather than spending 5 or 10 minutes on it, we're going to spend a whole session on it. So often in the TSC and what we cover in the webinars will be quite simple. It's a simple idea because your life is complicated enough. You don't need a complicated transformation process, but we will really go into it in a lot of detail. We'll problem solve the challenges and troubleshoot and help you apply that principle to yourself as a unique individual. So that's why, for example, we spend 5 or 10 minutes on emotional hygiene today, but in the series, we'll actually spend a whole session on it. Then we're going to talk about the value of our emotions. So it's pretty easy to understand the value of our pleasant emotions, like feeling happy or feeling calm. But we're going to talk about this idea that even the not nice feelings that we might experience can be really good feelings. For example, a lot of my clients feel a lot of guilt, and also a lot of anger. Whether they realize that, it might come up as frustration or resentment or hostility. But a lot of, these are just a couple of examples. And we often think of those as bad emotions. I shouldn't feel guilty. I shouldn't feel angry. But we're going to go through and help you get in touch with and help you understand the whole variety of your emotions. So, for example, guilt is a reparative emotion. Guilt encourages us, it gives us a desire to say sorry. It helps us understand what we don't want to do again to another person or to ourselves. So if we learn to listen to that emotion, we can actually, and not smother it with food, we can actually use that emotion as really rich information that can help us create a lot better life. Same with anger. Anger is a very powerful, motivating emotion that tells us that our boundaries are being crossed or that something's not very fair. So if we learn to listen to that and tune into it, there's a lot of powerful information there that can help us actually create better lives. Then we're going to find the cure for emotional eating. More marvelous methods and emotional hygiene, and a lot of the things that we do to manage our feelings are treatments for emotional eating. But the cure, when you have been fully cured for emotional eating, the cure for emotional eating is actually having a great life on whatever terms that is for you. And so we're actually going to look at what you want in life and what's getting in the way of you having a great life, and help you overcome some of those barriers. And Cindy said, the cure for emotional eating, whoop, whoop, sounds awesome. It is awesome. Then we're going to look at the power of positive thinking, because of course our thoughts are the lens through which we view the world, and that lens will affect the balance of our emotions. So we're going to look at creating an optimistic, grateful, kind way of thinking. But of course, positive thinking is not the whole picture, and positive thinking sometimes is impossible for us in certain situations. So we're going to look at what we do when we can't think positively and how we manage those unhelpful thoughts using an interesting combination of mindfulness and Zen principles. Jessica said, "Hail the cure." It's pretty cool, guys, and that's why we do this work. So we're not just tackling the symptom, we're looking at everything that's going on underneath it. And I call it, we're not sort of cutting off emotional eating at the top, we're actually uprooting the emotional eating. So then we go on and we're doing 5 weeks on the freedom from emotional eating. Again, we're going to talk in depth about more marvelous methods to manage your moods and actually do that activity in a very detailed way, just so you can then not just understand it, but apply it to you. And that's one of the things we do really, really well in our transformation support community, in any of our series that we do. It's not about understanding the theory, because you can get the theory quite easily. It's about applying it to you as a unique individual. Then we haven't really talked about this too much, apart from to talk about the hyperpalatable foods. But of course, the food industry creates foods that are designed to hit that impulsive system of our brain, that Kirk system of our brain. And they spend a lot, the food industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So they spend a lot of effort in addicting us to the foods. So we're going to make sure that we can change the rules of the game, because right now the rules of the game are set up for the food industry to win, and we're going to look at changing the rules of the game so it's set up for us to win. And then we're going to look at how we actually win the game for good, because the food industry is crafty and they do make it hard for us. They create this kind of, I call it emotional habitual eating. It's like half emotional eating, half habit eating. And it can be hard to overcome. So we're going to give you the tools to empower yourself to be able to overcome that. And then we're going to look at this idea. We've kind of talked about this, that emotional eating is like double dipping on a bad mood. It's not really going to get us what we want. And really, we're going to talk about this idea that all emotional eating boils down to some unpleasant feelings that we need to resolve, some unmet wants or needs that we need to actually get met rather than try to meet them through food, or some things in our life that need changing. So we're going to look at how you actually get what you really want when you're feeling emotional. And then we're going to turn that gift into a total superpower. So you just use your emotions as these really powerful guides to help you actually create a better life than if you weren't in touch with them, and then if you were smothering them with food. Then we do a session where we tie it all together. So we actually spend a whole lot of time in the webinars helping you troubleshoot and problem solve. I'd say that's probably almost half of each webinar because that part's so important. But it never hurts to have a bit of time at the end to just kind of wrap everything up. So all of this is done in our transformation support community. So what is the transformation support community? The TSC, as we lovingly call it, is a membership community. So like a gym, you can sort of join when you want, you can finish up whenever you want. And here's kind of what we do. Every week, we have a live webinar, and that webinar is with myself or with one of our special guests. So those regular sessions are just designed to keep you on track and motivated. And for this emotional eating and psych wellbeing series, it's all me. So you'll just get 12 weeks of me, you very lucky things. With the program, you also get access to our entire 12-month transformation online, which is a series of 5 online programs. And one of those programs, it's called Freedom from Emotional Eating, is specifically designed to help you to overcome emotional eating. You also get access to our complete reprogramming series audio programs. So that's a set of 3 audio programs. And again, one of those audio programs is designed to help you to overcome emotional eating. We have a really special Facebook community with transformation. We call them transformation support coaches, but at the moment they're fully registered psychologists or fully registered dietitians. So there's a lot of close contact, and we make a commitment to Monday to Friday get back to everybody within 24 hours, and the community is just wonderful. Just to let you know about a couple of other things we have, where we're always improving the program. So this new program, this new format has only been going since the start of the year. But since the start of the year, we've added on optional accountability buddies, so you can have an accountability buddy. We've done a really cool sort of welcome video series to help you understand all about the program and how to make the most of it. Our most recent thing that we've added is what we call one-on-one pathway to success sessions. So these are one-on-one 15-minute sessions with our transformation support coaches, just to help you really with any sticking points or applying the principles to you. And because we're always improving, the thing that we're going to add on some way through this series is actually an app and some phone reminders. So you can have some little reminders of what we're covering that week, just popping up as gentle reminders to help you stay on track. And so Cindy asked a really, really good question. How big is the TSC? And Facebook groups can be overwhelming when they get huge. So at the moment, we have about 275 people in the TSC. And that community is, I'm never going to limit the amount of people that could be in the TSC. I can see it potentially supporting thousands, even tens of thousands of people. But my commitment is the program needs to get better as it gets bigger. So what I do is I actually limit not the overall size, but the growth of the TSC. So for this webinar series, we're only going to take 80 new members. And 80, as we add all these things on, 80 seems to be a number that we can really, really cope with well. And LK said, is there a community for non-Facebook users? The community at the moment is in the Facebook group, but as I'll talk you through, actually, I'll talk you through it now. These are the sort of the key values of the transformation support community. The first one is simplicity. As we said, life is challenging enough. We don't need a challenging change process. So we aim to keep things really simple. Support, and you can see there's a lot of support. So the weekly webinars, we send you a weekly email, there's the Facebook community, there's the one-on-one pathway to success sessions. There's a lot of support because we do know that you need a lot of support to change. That's one thing that all of our research shows very, very clearly. The third thing is there's flexibility. So if you're not a Facebook user, the Facebook group is not necessary. You have all these access to these beautiful online programs and audio programs, but this is not a necessary part. So one of the things we do is we help you understand how to use the program in a way that is right for you. And there's lots of flexibility to sink your teeth right into it, or actually keep it nice and easy, which we encourage a lot of our members to do. Oh, and Carolyn said, because we have a coach reply to everyone, it's very positive and encouraging, not overwhelming at all, unlike others that I belong to. Yet because we, and as I keep talking, I'll just put up a couple of people who have had some good experiences with the TSC. Because this is a community that we want to go forever, essentially, we spend a lot of time not only supporting the community, but actually helping you as members become better members. So the Facebook group is not like the wild, wild west, like some Facebook groups, but because we're a team. We actually help members know what's appropriate to post and how to respond to each other in a way that supports without judging. And I think that for me, I think that community is half of the benefit of the program for a lot of people. And again, this is another person who's done really, really well. And really is enjoying the program. But it really is a very special community. And I do think that for a lot of people, that sense of community and having a safe space where you can walk the journey with people who share a lot of your experiences, and there's that shared experience, that sharing of stories is sometimes as powerful as the work we're doing. So, look, I would just love you to experience the benefits that some of our members are currently experiencing, some of the ones you've just seen, and help you to overcome emotional eating, yes, and of course overcome the weight-related struggles that come with emotional eating, but also to help you to feel better, maybe than you have felt in a long time. So let me let you know about the details of this series. Like I said, there's 80 introductory member places, so 80 new member places. Now, I just emailed our email community. Probably a lot of you guys got the email, and just to sign up for this free webinar. And already, I think 18 spots have gone from that email. People are like, oh, I just want to jump in. So there's 62 spots remaining for this upcoming series. And the way you secure your spot is you just register, and Nick will put up the link to the program so you can register now if you would like to, and that's the way you kind of save your spot. And then I think now's a really good time, because then you got a couple of weeks, you can get to know the program. It would take you a week or so to find your bearings and, go through that welcome video series that we created. And they're just short little videos, but do a few things like get your accountability buddy if you want one. We encourage you to do a mindset quiz so you can actually see that your scores are improving. So from this course, we should see that our emotional eating scores are improving. We should see that there's a measure of depressed mood, and that should improve. And there's a measure of stress and depressed and anxious mood, sorry. And then there's a measure of stress. So they're the three things that we're really going to cover in this series, although a lot of your other scores in that psychological profile will improve as well. The other cool thing is we do have like a 7-day free trial on now. So you can even jump in and you won't even have to pay for the first week. So that's cool too. Now, we did have the program. The program is normally $120 a month, but we had an introductory member sort of rate at the start of the year, and because of like COVID and everything that's gone on with that, we've just kept that rate. So we're going to keep that rate until this program. So we're actually going to increase the fees to the normal fees next year, because this will be the last series that we do in the program. So you can still access that price. And what that means is you get that same price forever. So when other people start to sort of pay more, when the price goes up, you'll still get that for as long as you're a member with us. And so Nick has put up that link, and here's the link there as well. Let me just check the chat box. And I think we've actually gone pretty much to time, which is unreal. I know this has been a bit of a crash course, but if it was a bit too much, you could either just re-watch this or just sign up in the program, and we're going to cover all of this really slowly, really thoroughly, in a lot of detail in the series. So guys, if anyone have any other questions, Carolyn said it's great belonging to the TSC, and you can watch it at your leisure. So that's sometimes if people are worry about, when the webinars are this time. So if you can make this live, you can make it. It's 7:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time every Wednesday. And if you don't watch the webinars live, I think I've got a couple of frequently asked questions. We actually find that now almost 70% of our people don't actually watch the webinars live. They watch them in their own time. Now, if you miss one, there was a question about missing. What if I miss them? And, we don't actually want you to feel left behind. So one of the things that we've done is we've created it so, of course, all of the webinars go in a logical order and they build on each other, but they're all designed to be independently valuable. So if you miss one, you can just slot right into the next one. And that webinar is designed to be self-contained and independently valuable. And then if you want to go back, you can always go back. You have those webinars for you anytime you want. So we find that helps, because when you're feeling behind, then you feel demotivated, you feel like you're not doing it right, and then you stop. And the TSC is about real change, and we do have off focus times. We do know that life happens, so we actually make it as user friendly as possible. So there's another couple of questions we've answered the one about the members. And yeah, if you want to cancel your subscription, it's just like a gym membership. So you can start whenever you want, and then you can finish up whenever you want. There's no like contracts or anything like that. Let me see if there's any other questions. Karen asked, how long would you estimate for this kind of change to take? Look, Karen, we are in the transformation support community. One of the things that we are is we're real about change. It's a no nonsense. It's not your life will change in 8 weeks. Things are going to be perfect. And that just sort of sets a scene for you to feel like if you're not one of the top performers, you're not doing well enough. That's rubbish. We in the TSC, we're real about change. We often say we share in each other's successes, we celebrate each other's successes, and we share in each other's struggles as well. So it's a very real program. So what I would say is that this 12-week program is designed to give you a real and a noticeable improvement. We should be able to measure that. So by the end of this 12 weeks, your emotional eating will go down. You'll be doing less emotional eating, and your mood will go up. You'll feel less sadness, depression, anxiety, stress, and you'll feel more of the pleasant emotions. And that will happen in the 12 weeks. Penelope asked, so the 12-week program is $270. I don't know, it's 3 months, so it's 3 times whatever the 89.95 is. If that's what that is, that's what it is. And then it becomes your choice. I'll let you know, of course, about what was coming up next and the future developments, and go, oh, I'm quite into that. I'd like to give that a go. Or this might be something that you just really, really need to tackle, and then you're happy as Larry with that. So, guys, I am just going to quickly. Oh, there's some references if you're interested in those. I'm just going to quickly bring us back to stop sharing my screen and bring us back to the Brady Bunch mode, because this is the way we normally are in the transformation support community. I don't rely on slides a lot, especially because we're just often in the TSC, in the webinars, we're just covering one topic. So it becomes quite easy. And then we're actually doing interacting, and we're doing exercises and that type of thing. So guys, it doesn't seem like there's any more questions. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope that there's been something that's been valuable for you today. I would encourage you to do a little personal reflection and think, okay, well, is there something, even if it's just one thing that I could take out of this, and maybe not even do anything differently, but just have a little play and have a little experiment with, and, not give myself too much pressure, but just, have a little play with it and experiment and see what happens. And there's some lovely people saying, thank you so much. Oh, that's really nice. It's been great. Oh, that's very, very cool. Yeah, and helpful already. Perfect. Oh, and Raina said, loving the book, by the way. Yep, perfect. Yeah, it's cool, isn't it? Guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being with me. And I'll look forward to hopefully helping you take the next step soon. Take care, guys.